Welcome to Data Wars.
Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Data Wars, where Ash and I talk to experts from the industry and get their point of view on data, cloud, and AI. And today's guest is in this series is Harro Wiersma. Harro, I got your name hopefully right, but Harro has over 25 years of expertise in data-related fields. He has been a thought leader, author, and public speaker in the field of data strategy and governance, and I'm super excited to have him. Harro, it's an honor to have you in the Data Wars episode. And with over 25 years expertise in data governance, related data management, and master data management, which is true topic that I care the most about, I feel like every day, you're truly an expert. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself to your audience and how you got started on this data governance journey?
Thank you very much, Prash. It's great to be here with you and Ash and all the listeners today. Harro Wiersma, I'm originally from the Netherlands and now residing half of my time in Switzerland and half of my time in Portugal. Very much focused on the European market. And I started about 25 years ago with databases, Oracle databases, Oracle 8, Oracle 7.2. In that period of time, I started as a database administrator in a company that was focusing on data warehousing. And the only thing that I could imagine when I had my interview was data warehousing. Yeah, a big warehouse with a lot of data in it. And already very quickly, I understood that the more data as a corporation, as an enterprise you have, the more we have to focus on that we structure certain things. And in the beginning of the years with Oracle databases and you had Sybase and Microsoft and that kind of things, it was always a very big topic on the data architecture. How would you make things easy to reach, indexes that needed to be created manually and that kind of thing. So it really from a technical side where I already understood very quickly that the business perspective of the data was forgotten quite often there. And that is how over the years I focused more and more on building this bridge between the technical side and the business side. And data governance is, in my opinion, exactly that. We built a bridge between the technical people that are very good in their work in the databases, in the data pipelines, in reports, in analytics, in data science, AI, all that topics. But quite often very far away from what the business is needing.
Right.
And the business can't really talk to the technical people. And in that way, with data governance or data excellence, like some people tend to call it nowadays, we build that bridge and we enable the two sides of the house to talk to each other in a structured way. And I think that is what I love about what I'm doing, is that I'm able to bring those both sides of an audience together.
I think that makes two of us because I can
Yeah.
relate to what you're saying, Caro. I've lived in the world of the indexes and the databases you talked about just now, and trying to find a way to like how does that map to the business outcomes companies are trying to drive. I think there's a big role we as experts need to play in that. Ash, you had a question.
I was, fascinated because my journey was very similar. I know Prash, you as well. We started in the core data areas, and I was curious, Harold, how do you kind of transition from being a databases and then, in core databases, and then kind of getting in thought leadership for data strategy, and what really inspired you to get into governance?
So the first step that I did was move more towards the technical project management side
Mm,
of the data processing, basically.
mm,
So the first project that I did, and I've been a freelance consultant for many years, and I was able to choose my own projects in that way. and choose where I could use my existing knowledge and where I could learn new things. And especially the last 15 to 17 years, I've been really focusing on the data governance side, data quality management, master data management, the security side of the house. That becomes more and more important. And we get all these new regulations in Europe,
Yeah.
GDPR,
Right.
the General Data Protection Act. In the US, also things like HIPAA from a pharmaceutical and a hospital side.
Yeah.
So we need to transition there, and I had the opportunity to over several projects to gain this experience, get certifications in this field, and in that way move to it. And I love to talk about what we're doing. I love to have these discussions with people about how can we become better. I
Yeah.
think every day that we haven't learned something is a wasted day. And from every person that you meet, you can learn something,
Yeah.
or they can learn something from me. And in that way, I've been able to come to writing books, speaking on seminars, doing thought leadership in a more wider scope as well. And um,
It's very
I
cool.
don't think that you should call yourself a thought leader, but as the question was that,
Yeah. No,
I'm happy
it's
to jump onto that.
it's fascinating. I just want to break that down a bit. So you got in technical project management, and then you started managing data projects, and essentially the need for governance sort of emerged, and it sort of piqued your interest, and that's how you started pursuing this and writing books on this topic.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
That is the way that I chose, and that worked for me
Yeah.
in the market position as well.
Yeah.
I think for people that are right now in a position where they want to grow from a technical side of databases, or from an AI perspective, there probably will be a different road than I was taking over the last years, because the market wasn't ready for it. We have been talking about data quality, about master data management for so many years, but also the tooling wasn't available in that scale
Right.
that it is now. And the tooling that was available was so technical oriented, where you had to write regex
Right.
scripts, or you had to build SQL scripts and all that kind of things to be able to master your data. And
Yeah.
nowadays, with a lot of tooling, if we look, for example, at a tool like Reltio for data mastering, you don't need any technical knowledge anymore to be able to implement that. Maybe the data pipeline into it is still technical, but the rest is very much business focused and data steward and data owner focused.
It's very
So
true.
in that way, the people that are now in such a position will be able to get into this data governance, data excellence topic in a complete different way.
Yeah.
But you
A
need
very good
the
point of view.
the know-how
Yeah.
about the data, about how is it constructed, to be able to do that kind of things, of course.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, Haro. I think the
Yeah.
one of the foundational aspects of thought leadership for me is breaking down complex things into something simple people can understand, right?
So
And I
true.
think that's more relevant, more applicable in the data governance space, because the data governance often come across as this gigantic thing that now we need to do, which is like, hey, how do we break down this into pieces and really
Yeah.
try to do that correctly? It can be a daunting topic, data governance, right? So I'm curious to learn from you and how you simplify the complex governance topic into something people or clients you work with understand, and especially in the market that you play in.
Yeah, the most important starting point is that I always say with data governance, we create value for the organization. We're not to limit anybody in the way how they use their data or how they want to create their data.
Hmm.
We are simply building up these guidelines, how they can do it in a better and more structured way. If you drive on the motorway, especially here in Southern Europe, you have quite often on certain lanes also a minimal speed. So the middle lane of a 3-lane highway, you're only allowed to do or a minimum of 70 kilometers per hour, and on the left
Hmm.
lane, your only minimum is 90. And
Hmm.
a little bit the same way we have to do that with our SME customers or also larger organization. We have to give them the tooling, the guidelines, how to be able to do that. And we can start in very simple ways by structuring their organization into data domains that they understand.
Hmm.
Quite often, if you look at an organization from an enterprise architecture perspective, it is built on business processes or
Right.
very complex situations that for the regular users are not comprehensible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A field service engineer that
Yeah.
goes to a customer to install cable, for example, he doesn't think in a sales process or in a service process. He knows that he gets a service call, he hops in his car, he needs to have the spare parts in his van, and he needs to be able to do his job. That
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
is the view of
Sales. Yeah.
Yeah.
the
It's
this guy.
funny. It's funny because as you were talking there, Haro, you said two things which sparked the bulb in my head. Like you said, motorway, you said kilometers per hour. And then I look at where I'm sitting right now, which is in North America, obviously, and we say freeway instead of motorway, and we say miles instead of kilometers. So basically, my point is different lines of businesses or different
Yeah.
groups within the
Yeah.
company speak different languages, but they all mean the same thing in some sense, right?
Yeah.
So
I
it's an
just want to
interesting
point
challenge to
also, Prash,
address at
that
the governance standpoint.
um,
Yeah.
so I'm in Canada and we call them highways.
That's exactly true. Yeah,
So
everybody
Amazing,
says
amazing.
the
Yeah.
different
business
things.
glossary, you can just kind of see right there when you're trying to bridge these gaps, how important governance
Hmm.
becomes.
And then what is exactly a highway or a freeway? What do we
Right.
define with that? And
Right.
and that is exactly the starting point where you have to start with an organization. How can we all talk the same language? How can we,
Mm.
when we talk about a customer, what
Mm.
is a customer for us? Is a
Yeah.
lead or a prospect already a customer?
Mhm.
Or is that something else? And how do we manage the data around these people? If you go to a conference, everybody scans your badge nowadays
Right.
and gets all your data automated in the system. Unfortunately, when we do sales, and it's independent in what kind of organization you do sales, um, we can't scan the customer's QR code or barcode to get
Right.
their data. So most things are written manually into a system.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so and then my first name is maybe still easy, and I think all our three last names, depending on the
Mhm.
region where you are, you have to explain how you write it exactly, because
Right.
otherwise there will be a spelling mistake.
Right.
So in that sense, when you start with such simple, or it's not simple, but basic rules around your data quality, you
Yeah.
can start improving things in a quicker way. And I've built a framework with 6 steps basically around that, where we
Mhm.
really can guide every level of employee in their work
Mm.
to improve their data.
Mm.
We're
Mhm.
not talking about data mastering yet, just data
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
as a starting point
So,
for
Harold, hold that
for the
thought. We're going to
people.
get in the framework. You said something which I wanted to ask you about. So, when you approach a new customer, you mentioned that what Prash said, it's a complex landscape, and you like to break it down by the domain first. So, and you give an example of an engineer going to a customer and installing a cable. Um, so let's take telecom as an example, if that is something you're referring to. How do you usually approach this to help customers break it down so it simplifies for them that okay, this is how we will do this, on a high level. You break it down to domain. It could be customer domain, then you could also have the equipment in there for the domain as well. So any example you can share with us to help kind of drill this point further in your experience?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the maturity of the customer. I think there are different frameworks where people look at the maturity, but basically you have from zero data governance implementation to a full-blown enterprise-wide international implementation and everything in between. And quite often, basically, I come into projects most of the time at two different moments,
Hmm.
or when upper management has found out, so hey, we have problems with our data, we need to do something, and we need external help with that. So I come at a point zero greenfield approach.
Hmm.
That is the one moment, and the second moment is when there has been a larger transformation project,
Hmm.
for example, an SAP migration or a JD Edwards to Oracle Financials migration, something like that, and it went wrong. And most of the time, it went wrong based on the data.
Right.
And in good English said, when shit hits the fan, I come in and they need to have solutions now. And both starting points have a different approach,
Hmm.
because when you come from a zero perspective, we need to build up from the ground up the thought process. And in that kind of projects, it's basically 80% change management
Hmm.
and 20% technical implementation.
Makes sense.
In the transformation that went wrong situation, it is most of the time the other way around, where we are 60 to 80% really on technical implementation to create the data quality, to create mastering, to build these pipelines over different systems that are using the data to
Hmm.
ensure that operations keeps running. And that is a little bit the difference also in how the approach will be. When you start from zero, you really have to start with how do people understand the organization and the data,
Right.
and how can we guide them
Yeah,
into those steps.
I was literally going to ask you a question about the SAP and ERP modernization. You got there before even I could ask you that. That's such an important topic these days, Haro, because
Yeah.
um, last couple of years, and I think it's fueled by some of the decisions vendors like SAP, who are large ERP vendors, are making about moving away from on-prem installations to their cloud-based installations. So they're moving their customers, who are large in number. I mean, ERP, SAP is pretty dominant player in that market. Obviously, there is a role data plays, because they can't simply take these large ERP initiatives to cloud without looking at data, looking at rationalizing customer, vendor, product, supplier, all that data to
Yeah.
rationalize that better. Because in often case, in fact, what I have seen is there are organizations which are at the medium or the large scale organizations have anywhere from 3 to 4 instances of ERP, all the way up to 70 or 80 instances of ERP. Can you believe that? Like
I
the
know.
kind of
It's tough.
complexities that it creates, and then the organizations which make a decision to move to a one single ERP in the cloud, they are hit with this reality of like, how do I rationalize data across these systems so I have a clean slate approach in the cloud, right? So I
Yeah.
see more and more of that, and I think the work you're doing, and then the in what you mentioned there, is
Yeah.
really critical, because data plays
Yeah.
an important role in that.
I mean, it's MDM 101 really, and a lot of organizations have not spent time flexing that MDM muscle. So now, when you go into any integration project, understanding your master data and then working with that becomes extremely critical. And no, I'm completely agreeing. Like, and you would assume that this revolution started 20 years ago, and most corporations would have their master data sorted out, or at least have somewhere close to it.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a journey, and I think that's where, your experience comes in. um, I wanted to kind of talk to you about a bit. What are your thoughts about this whole movement with governance? When it initially started, it was around we have to govern the data, and then analytics came along, and then now the whole thought behind democratizing the data governance portion of things. When you approach a client and you're in the weeds, thinking about building a dashboard or getting access to the entire company to this data seems like a very far-fetched idea. um, how do you kind of take, like, you're in the weeds, stuck in the problem. How do you kind of take that and then you go forward? And what challenges have you faced in taking them from this basic building blocks, identifying master data, to now integrating into company's culture? We're trying to educate the entire company on democratizing the data.
Yeah, I think one very important word that you mentioned there, Ash, is culture.
Hmm.
And that depends very much on where in the world you are doing such a project as well. If I look at how most European companies are organized compared
Hmm.
to in Asia or in Northern America, there's a very wide scope of very patriarchal driven companies to also companies that are completely in the Spotify model of organization where each tribe and each squad is completely independent.
Mm,
So the democratization of data, um, it depends on the organization very much how far you can do that.
right.
Do you want to go to everything is open for everybody except for certain things not? Um, I've done a project for a very large blue and yellow company doing furniture from Northern Europe, and at that time their approach was that all the data is available for everybody except very critical kinds of data.
Right.
There are also companies, especially in very sensitive directions of R&D in biotech or medtech, where they do it the other way around. Nothing is available except uh, certain things. And
Hmm.
from a data governance perspective, we can work with both approaches. It is simply the rule set that you start creating for such approaches that is different. Personally, I think that um, a more, let's say, power to the people
Hmm.
approach will enable an organization more to be innovative and more transparent. And if
Hmm.
we now look at also things like ESG reporting and that kind of things, we need to have that kind of controls available for a wider scope of people to be able to do their work in a better way. So
Hmm.
um, also creating your data and enabling people to ensure that the data is correct and that we have one version of the truth and that kind of
Yeah.
things. That's very important there.
I agree. Agree. I think it kind of an extension to that question Ash asked is a sort of a two-part question, if you will. So we have technical folks on one side who understand what we're talking about easily sometimes, because I feel like I relate to them very often because I came from a technical background. But then there are non-technical folks, right? So who also are involved in this process, right, on the business side. So I think my question is, have you found any formulas to how to best empower those folks who are on the non who are non-technical in nature, but also need to have equal accountability, equal amount of ownership, and then not to get overwhelmed by jargon. So that's one part of it. The second part is, more about the sort of the culture of the stewardship and things like that. How do you foster that culture in the organization when both technical and non-technical peoples are involved in the effort of governance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say we're all data stewards.
Hmm.
It's
I like that.
independent if you work in a financial department, if you work as a cable installer expert, or you're the CEO or CIO from a company. We're all data stewards, and
Mm,
we all
Hmm.
have responsibility there. Of course, we need to
Hmm.
create these more set responsibilities as a data owner, a data steward, on the technical side, a data custodian, and that kind of roles. But the responsibility lays with everybody, and I think that by also building up the right knowledge in the organization for example, with
Mm-hmm.
e-learnings that are integrated in the e-learning system of the company, that you
Mm-hmm.
are able to reach a lot more people. And when you show them that we're not talking about jargon, we talk about their daily work that we are trying
Mm.
to improve. And if you
Mm-hmm.
talk to a customer support employee and they have to look through 5 different systems to
Mm-hmm.
combine manually all the information about a customer, to understand what has been done in the past, what kind of contract do they have, what kind of product do they have, where are they located, etc., etc. And we can show them that we can are able with fairly simple rule sets and ways of
Mm-hmm.
working, that they are able to go to one system where they have the full view of a customer, and
Mm-hmm.
all the information is correct. We know the zip code, or like we
Right.
call it, the postal code,
Right.
on this side of the ocean.
Same
The
Yeah.
here.
phone number is correct, and that when we talk about a product, that we all talk about the same thing. What is a product? Not that for
Mm-hmm.
sales and marketing a product is something different than for the person in the warehouse that is picking the parts that need to be in the van for the installer expert. So in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, we have to build this business glossary of terminology,
Mm-hmm.
that we all know how it's how what we mean with what is a product. And in that
Mm-hmm.
way we can then map that to the different systems, and we know, okay, in the ERP system is a product a combination of these 4 or 5 fields.
Yeah.
In our CRM system, it is one field, because it's the package name that is used by marketing and sales.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For the warehouse, the product are these 5 or 6 components
Mm-hmm.
plus the installation pack. And in that way, we are always able to connect these systems. And what I always love to see, and at very high level, but to create this, maybe you've seen these London Tube map constructs, where
Mm-hmm.
we have the blue
Yeah.
line, the red line, the
Right.
yellow line, and we
Yeah.
connect data across the different processes and systems, so that we know where do we find this data and where do we have dependencies, and if we change something in system one, what kind of impact has does it have downstream.
Yeah.
We're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about data governance on an analytics or a reporting level. We talk about data governance on an operational system level, and that is
Right.
Mm-hmm.
quite often also the mistake that a lot of companies are doing. They're
Yeah.
implementing Snowflake, or they're implementing some other data lake or lakehouse approach, and they start doing data governance on that level. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
beautiful for your analytics and
Analytics.
reporting,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't help the people on the front line to be able to improve their work. And I
Yeah.
think that is
Yeah.
also quite often the discussion that I have.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
And a
Yeah.
lot of organizations are realizing that, but that is one of the hardest things to do, is getting your 10 departments having one definition, get everybody pitching in and mapping it to different elements sort of across different systems. Because it takes not only manpower, but you actually need real dedicated resources with knowledge who are able to kind of meet regularly to kind of bring this together. So I find one of the biggest challenges, or why companies prefer doing an analytics level, is because they don't want to get to that level, which is extremely cumbersome and requires a lot of resources. But something you said about, we're all data stewards, and I find that increasingly these days, um, a lot of companies are creating data governance silos. So what I mean by that is you have a very structured approach where you have an owner, you have business stewards, you have technical stewards, and the responsibilities are very sort of aligned to those roles. And if you're not in that role, the rest of the company just tosses it over in a queue or a ticket that, hey, there's a data issue for which you are the steward, can
Mm-hmm.
you look at it, right? Because they don't want to be going and letting everybody change the data. But that also kind of slows down the whole process. um, in your experience, how do you or advocate, probably is the right word, clients, because it's not an easy thing to do, to break these silos and build a culture of data stewardship so everyone feels responsible? Like, how do we actually implement that? Exactly what you said, everyone is a data steward. Any tips for the audience?
Yeah, that is a big transformation concept, and that is probably one of the hardest things to do in these projects or programs to do so. What I've learned is that when you show people exactly where the value of this kind of thoughts in their daily work is,
Right.
and that when everybody looks twice when they write a first and a last name in a box and an address, that it's correct and that it's usable and that kind of things. You can guide the people with that. As an example, if the gentleman in the warehouse that has to put the spare parts in the van of the cable installer expert takes the parts but doesn't check it out in the system, and
Right.
3 weeks later somebody wants to take these parts and they are not in the system, we have a bigger problem than just the
Right.
data not in the system registered. Then
Mhm.
a service call can't be fulfilled. We
Yeah.
have a customer that is unhappy because his cable is not running for a longer period, or we have to do an urgent order, higher costs, and that kind of things. And if you use that kind of examples,
Hmm.
um, really very close to the work of the people doing, and that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and you need to get to know the company and how the
Yeah.
company is working and thinking. Then
Yeah.
you can guide the people in this kind of things, and really take them by the hand,
Mhm.
and bring them further.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's very insightful. Essentially, do it by use cases.
Yeah.
Once you uncover one use case which was causing problem, you market that inside the company heavily, so everyone is motivated to collaborate, and you facilitate this via stewardship committees, or bringing people in different areas together, so you can uncover more use cases, and as you uncover more use cases you market them further. I know, I love that. I think it's hard, but I think it is the right way to do it. I love that approach.
I normally
I
really
yeah.
work use case driven or business case driven with my customers, and not system or data object driven. Of course, we have to build
100%.
the data
Yeah.
domains, and understand what kind of data do we have in the organization. But by starting really on business cases and use cases, we are able to change in a quicker way, because
Yeah.
then it becomes a topic for everybody,
Hmm.
instead of that it's seen as an IT topic, because data is still quite often seen as an IT topic or a technical topic. And by using the use cases, it becomes a business topic.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree on that, Harold. I think that's a great insight.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk a little bit before we go into sort of a wrap up stage here is you have written books like Don't Screw Up Your Data. And from what I understand from our last conversation, you're also writing one book, which is very interesting for me, is Don't Screw Up Your Master Data, which is a special type of data which needs a lot of handling, right? So, very, very intriguing topics for me. I'm curious to learn more, but in the time we have, I would like to hear a 2 or 3 minute version of what the summary of those books are. I think it's very, very interesting topics. So can you give us some insights into
And
what you're
before you
talking
answer
about in
that,
these books?
Hero, I also want to throw in a question which came to me. Um, if you could couple that also with advice you could give organizations which are looking to implement successful data governance strategy, that would be great. I'm
Yeah,
all ears.
yeah,
So the first book, the Don't Screw Up Your Data, is focused very much on the analytical side of data.
Hmm.
And
uh-huh,
I've tried to bring in there 15 examples of how not to use your data.
Nice.
hmm,
Most consultants will tell you, or you should do this, or you should do that. And I try to show them also what you shouldn't do, and be able to learn from mistakes that others have been doing. And the same thing with the Don't Screw Up Your Master Data. It's a usable framework for implementing master data in your organization. And I've worked with so many customers over the last years, and I've seen so many projects fail because of so many different reasons. From um, big three-letter consulting companies, high-profile PowerPoint creating champions that have wonderful ideas, but are not really usable for most of my customers. And the ideas that they have are in foundation very, very good, but quite often so far away from reality that we have to guide our customers as well on the level of what shouldn't we do and what should we do. And that's how I came up with the both books, Don't Screw Up Your Data and Don't Screw Up Your Master Data, to really ensure that there's also a possibility of learning for whoever wants to read the books, and be able to learn from other mistakes there.
That's great. That's great.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
if you could, in advice to organizations, quickly give us a rundown of the six-step framework which you were mentioning earlier.
So the six steps that I normally start with is first create the business case or the need, or the use case that you want to tackle. And then we start analyzing the processes around that use case. Where are the data created? Where is it used? Where is it changed? Where is it archived or deleted? And based
Hmm.
on that, we can start analyzing the data quality, and we can analyze the business impact. If
Hmm.
it's a very small business impact, maybe it's not the right time to look at this use case right now, or sometimes it is the right use case to have like a lighthouse for the rest of the organization to
Hmm.
showcase how do you want to go, and then identify the root cause. Start developing the improvement plan, and then there are the two sides: prevent current issues and prevent or solve the current issues and prevent future issues.
Issues. Makes sense.
And then, as the last step, the implementation of the controls, so that we have a transparency about where are we.
Right.
And
Hmm.
it's of course all combined with communications, actions, and really results. And I think data governance, data excellence needs to create transparency. We're not
Yeah.
trying to hide anything. We're trying to create value for the organization. And that is what I said in the beginning already. That is, I think, the most important thing. We're not policing. We're not trying to limit people. We're
Hmm.
trying to simply improve the organization, create more value, lower costs, lower risks, and be able to have happier customers. And I think that is something that is overarching over all the business processes that we do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's great. Thank you.
Hello, that is a kind of framework and the things that we need to put in place to ensure
Hmm.
customers are really successful with this. Because, as I said, I think earlier, governance can be extremely complex topic. It needs to be broken down, and the frameworks like the ones which you are building together, I think, comes in a long way. So this has been a fantastic conversation, by the way. I absolutely loved everything that you said here, and I hopefully some of it we can use on our own approaches in our
Yeah.
organizations. Thanks for sharing those insights on governance, MDM, and the challenges in the modern data strategies that companies are taking. Harro, I want to give you a minute here to sort of talk to our listeners directly and talk about where they can find you, where they can find your books, and how can they best connect with you. Take a minute
So
and talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
So of course, on all the big book platforms, you will find my books. Amazon as the largest one, of course. LinkedIn,
Mhm.
always welcome to connect and have a fruitful conversation, or via private message, or on our feeds. Because the more people we talk to, the better we can become. And I'm also
Mhm.
learning every day from ideas and concepts of other people. And of course, my personal website. If you search for my name, you will find that. So you can connect via
Mhm.
me or via my website there as well.
Thanks again, Harold, for
Excellent.
joining us on Data Wars. One LinkedIn comment from you led to this podcast, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's how we connected. But I look forward to continuing this conversation and learning more from your work in the future. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Harold.
Thanks for having me, and I wish you very good luck with the other podcasts. And I'm looking forward to hear every episode that is coming.
We need more fans, Harro. Please subscribe once we get this out going. Thank you so much for
Please
your time
subscribe
again.
and press the bell. They say on YouTube. So let's do that.
Exactly. We need more of that. Thank you so much.